Hi, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. This is the second part of our show on International Baccalaureate in Bedford, which, as all of you know, has been an issue that has had some controversy since it first came into town and has risen to the top over the past couple of weeks, again because of legislation that has passed the New Hampshire House. This part of the show will deal with the folks from the school department who are obviously advocates of International Baccalaureate, and we will have an awful lot to talk about. And this part of the show will actually be split in half because we have 5 guests. It's going to be great. So we're going to go right into things. I'll introduce who's with me on this portion, and then we'll start talking a whole bunch of things about International Baccalaureate in Bedford. So stay with us for the whole thing. Okay, tonight, to my far right, and I'm looking at my card, so I'll give everybody the right title. And thank you all, by the way, for being here. For those of you who are watching, you wouldn't know this, but it is about 7:45 at night that we're taping. And as you know, school people start their days very early, so we do appreciate all of you being here tonight. So on my right is Chip McGee, familiar face to many, and he's the Assistant Superintendent of the Bedford Schools for Curriculum and Assessment. To my closest right, near right, is Andrew or Andy Mezeske. Am I pronouncing that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And he is a teacher at Bedford High School, one of the International Baccalaureate faculty. And finally, over on this side is Peter Gagnon, who is actually the International Baccalaureate Coordinator here in Bedford.
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, welcome, and I think we'll have a really great conversation. What I did with the group that was on just a couple of hours ago, we taped that portion, and what I did was take your program of study for this year, and in the little section you have about IB that states all of the benefits of it, I read that as kind of the primary points that advocates would make for the program, and said that as they spoke they could address those various issues as they saw fit as they went through whatever they wanted to do. So I'll do exactly the same thing with you, and because in the course of all the conversation, and I know the other 2 guests can hear us because they're in the control room, so you can all fight about who wants to answer what and when, okay?
All right.
Now, the biggest anti-arguments that I know you've all heard, and probably anybody who's paid attention has heard, so this is for the benefit of those who don't understand what the fuss is about, is that a lot of people say they don't like it because the curriculum was created in Europe, that the International Baccalaureate Organization is a non-governmental organization of the UN's Economic and Social Council, that the IB philosophy, according to their website, is national sovereignty, I always have a hard time with that word, must yield to the imperative of solving global problems, that the connection to the Earth Charter, which is something that one of its authors was actually Mikhail Gorbachev, is part of the program, and that advocates redistribution of wealth, both among and within nations, population control, military disarmament, etc., etc., etc. Many say there's no empirical evidence that International Baccalaureate students do better than students who go through AP. And cost, of course, which is always something that at least Bedford taxpayers will talk about, and I'll ask you some questions on that. And some people say that International Baccalaureate basically is kind of like a social engineering process to bring about a planned social, political, and economic change through the classroom. And I know you're looking at me like, stop, because I know you've heard all this before, but you know, those are the top ones. Some people feel as though we don't have local control because of the fact it is a Geneva-based organization who does have mandates for participation. And some people question how valuable it is to college admissions offices. Okay, so those are the arguments, and again, you can kind of go at them as you may choose, by whomever you may choose, and at whatever point you may choose. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right.
Well, I think the first argument that we can certainly address would be where the curriculum comes from, and I think this is a really important thing that needs to be sort of explained. The IB, as you mentioned, is a non-profit educational organization that does work with 3,000 plus schools in 141 countries, And what it tries to do is take the best from as many different places as possible. So it's trying to build a curriculum from several different countries, including the U.S., and trying to develop an educational system that allows for a lot of flexibility. That's kind of the only way that it has been so popular in so many places, is by being very flexible in its curriculum.
Okay.
And one of the things that I think I could add to that is the teachers in the school district, the teachers at Bedford High School, are the ones that are selecting the textbooks that are being used. So in my senior English course, which is an IB course, we'll read works like Jane Eyre, The Tempest, Hamlet, sort of classic texts that are selected by the community of teachers in order to best serve the needs of our community. It's we're the ones selecting the books, and that's the best example I think I can give to as an example of how controlled we are, and that goes through the vetting process that we have as our own school.
I would add. First, I think that those two answers are probably the most important pieces of the puzzle. I've been addressing the question of that gets raised a lot about the UN connections or concern about sovereignty for years. It gets raised a lot, and I can admit to a little bit of frustration because there's some things that just aren't true. For example, there is no current connection, formal connection between the UN UNESCO, which is an education element of the United Nations, and the International Baccalaureate Program. What there is a partnership. That is absolutely true. But for example, IB has partnerships with lots of organizations. Another one on the list is Rotary International. And I think of it this way. It's like rather than the curriculum being handed to us, because those decisions are made by our classroom teachers. What it is it's a chance to play in the kind of international competition to see how are we doing at Bedford High School, not just relative to Bow and Hanover, which I care about a lot, but I want to know how we're doing relative to competition from around the world, and that's the thing that International Baccalaureate provides, is we know how we do in each of these subject areas for something like 340 students each year, how those students are doing relative to their peers in other countries, and that's pretty important from my point of view in terms of the quality of the education that we provide at Bedford High School.
Excuse me. I guess if I can address the cost issue, we have some information about cost.
Definitely.
We certainly feel like to be able to offer a program that's held in such high regard and is well respected, we certainly feel like the costs that are associated with it are reasonable. There is a $10,000 annual fee that's paid to the International Baccalaureate organization. There's a fee, and hopefully you can see this information. We do pay a regional fee, regional organization that allows us to be able to maintain professional relationships with with schools as far away as New York City. There's postage associated with the program, and it's run around $4,000 a year. There's hopes that those numbers are going to come down, and they've come down quite a bit over the last couple of years as we transition to a more digital means of providing them our materials. For instance, my coursework this year for Theory of Knowledge was uploaded electronically. So we're hoping that we won't have to spend as much money mailing out some of the assessments.
So that a lot of the postage is mailing the work of the kids?
Yep. So.
Oh, okay.
And actually, I'm going to just jump in. Do they mail it? Where does it get mailed? A lot of people have worried about where it gets mailed.
It depends on which class and which coursework, and where it gets mailed is to the examiner that has been determined for that exam.
Is that overseas?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. It really just depends on where the examiners are. For instance, this year's Spanish exams, I'm shipping them to San Diego, California, because there happens to be an examiner in an IB school out in California that will be examining our students'
Now,
Spanish
does
work.
Bedford have to pay a fee to each of these people?
A specific fee to each of these people? No. There's an exam fee that covers the cost of being able to compensate the examiners. So
Paid for by the
by
student.
students.
The
correct.
exam fee is.
The exam fee
right.
is paid for by the student.
Correct.
Right, I knew that, yeah. Okay.
And if we can go back to the rest of the fees just to finish it off, so there is a conference once a year to be able to participate and sort of keep up to date with what's taking place in the world of International Baccalaureate.
Now, is that out of state, out of country, what?
The last 2 years it's been in New York City, but we're
Okay.
happy that next year it's actually in Boston.
Okay.
So get a little closer to home and hopefully reduce costs once again. Then there's a large cost.
Now, how many people go to that?
That is 2 people typically.
Oh, so,
Yeah.
okay.
I've gone for the last 2 years, and along with one of the administrators, so that we can make sure that our voice is heard. In those meetings, I have contact with those that are involved in the actual designing of assessments. I've had actually conversations with the directors of the program, Jeffrey Beard, who's the director general of the program. So it's it's a good opportunity to meet the people that are making the decisions that run the organization. So,
Okay.
and to finish off, so teacher training is about $11,000 a year. That's projected based on, we'll have to figure out sort of where the needs are. There's redesigned curriculums. Each curriculum is on a 13-year schedule to be sort of redesigned, and when those come up, we have to send teachers to the updated trainings.
Okay.
And we did not train any of the administrators this year because they've all been trained. And I am also paid a salary to perform my role as the IB coordinator. And that puts us at an approximate budget this year of about $52,000.
Okay. Can I now throw at you some specific questions? And it's okay if you don't know the exact dollar amount, but if you can say if it's included in
To the best of my
52.
ability.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I know. I mean, nobody's walking around with a calculator. Well, at least I'm not walking around with a calculator in my head. You might be. You're always in on the
If
numbers.
anyone is, Peter.
What I did was, and again, and I don't claim to be an IB expert, not by a long shot. I do not have kids in the Bedford schools. My kids are out of school, so my knowledge base wouldn't be the same as you folks, certainly, and as of the parents that have kids in the system and such. So I had to do research, so I did it everywhere I could. Pro, con, internet, IB, and so on, and looked at some other people's budgets or proposed budgets and such. Which brings me to some of my questions. Okay?
Sure.
Just so you know that I wasn't pulling them out of my head.
No
all right. I know that you had to go through that whole 3-part application process. The feasibility study where you had to do your professional development and all of that, then the trial implementation, and then finally the authorization. Now you're totally IB coordinator, right? You're not doing other stuff at the high school too, or?
That is not correct. I actually
Yeah.
teach 2 of the IB courses.
Oh, okay.
So I'm also a classroom teacher. I teach
Okay.
humanities IB course and a science IB course.
Okay. Yeah,
Along-
I guess I did see that you were 0.5, right? IB.
So
The math is
something like that.
0.6 of the
Yeah.
position is dedicated to the coordinator position,
Okay.
and the rest is teaching classes, which
Okay.
are classes that
Right.
need to get taught.
Anyway,
whether
right.
Anyway,
Okay.
right. Yeah.